Kenny is an award-winning chef and restaurateur. His career spans over 2 decades, and he has graced him with opportunities to travel around the world and learn the authentic techniques and flavors of global cuisines. He has always had a love of cooking, growing up in Cleveland, but with roots in the South. His father was an avid barbecue man with his own rubs and sauces, while his mother was a fantastic home cook. In April of 2023, Kenny released his very first cookbook, Southern Cooking: Global Flavors from Rizzoli. Ooh, give it up for Kenny. Yes. And not mentioned in his bio, but he did have the wonderful restaurant Silky's here that I personally enjoyed and we loved. Yes. Yeah. And Kenny will be joined today in conversation with Cindy Sutton. Cindy and her husband are the parents of 3 children and are now first-time grandparents. Cindy is retired from the healthcare industry where she worked for almost 30 years, and she has lived in various places across the U.S. and is an avid traveler who enjoys great food and great wine and cocktails. So while living in different areas around the country and traveling around the world has afforded her the opportunity to eat at famous restaurants and experience the creativity and genius of a lot of chefs. Her husband and her, David, had the opportunity to experience Chef Kenny's creation in the late 90s when he was at the Ritz-Carlton in Amelia Island, and since then they have both been big fans of Chef Kenny and have traveled to other cities just to experience his cuisine. So Cindy, I will leave the rest to you.
I think we're live. Okay. So I'm Cindy Sutton, as she said, and I'm going to ask some questions. I think some of us know who Chef Kenny is, and some of us are going to need a little bit more of a background. So I know a little bit about your story and your history, but let's just start on your journey and why did you become a chef and how that track actually started.
Oh, gosh. Well, I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. My mom is from St. Augustine, Florida. My dad's from Chicago. I grew up just really watching my parents cook and entertain a lot. You know, we're a lot of house parties, and everything that was at our home was based on food, fashion, and music. And so when friends and family would come over, it was always a big party. I was always watching my dad, do barbecue in the backyard. My mom would take care of all the sides, or and she was in fashion, so I was always watching her like sew and stuff like that. So I knew that I wanted to, I was gonna have to work, and I wanted to do something I was gonna love to do. And like everything about the kitchen, I was all about it. I started scrambling my first egg when I was 3 years old. She literally had me at the stovetop and started teaching me all the basics. And then from there, by the time I was 7, I was doing my own little cookouts in the backyard, firing a little Weber grill with charcoal, starting off with hot dogs and going into hamburgers and getting other different meats. And then by the time I was 11, I was doing Thanksgiving dinner like from scratch, from start to finish. So
yeah, we know who to invite in November. No.
Yeah. So I'm a graduate of the Pennsylvania Culinary Institute out of Pittsburgh. I started with the Ritz-Carlton Company back in 1992 when I was, 18 and a half years old. I became the chef of the Grill Room back in late 96, where we had the 5-Diamond 4-Star Award. I was 23 years old at that time. And so I just kept working my way up. Shortly after 9/11, I moved to Naples, Florida, ran a huge club down there called Gulf Bay Group of Companies. There was a restaurant called Caxambas, and I was running like 5-6 restaurants. At that point, I was like right at 28, 29 years old. After I was there for like 2 years, went to Sea Island Company, where I was up in Georgia. I was executive chef at the Lodge at Sea Island, and ran their 50-room boutique hotel that had 6-7 restaurants. I was over 3 golf courses. That year, we did the G8 Summit. We did a UBS golf tournament. So yeah, it was back in 01.
I think so.
Yep. And then I came back to Jacksonville, was corporate chef for Matthew Medore and his restaurant group at that time. It was a San Marco group of restaurants where he had teamed up with Palm Savannah Sauce, and back then we had opened up Sobu, and we had Palm's Thai Bistro, Matthew's Restaurant Medore. We had converted the old Sterling's Market into Matthew's Market and Catering. So I was there, did that project, which was great. I left from there, joined back with the Ritz-Carlton. They recruited me to come back and and really work on the club side of the business, which they were growing. And so from there, I had opened up projects all around the country and all around the world. I took over a project in the Abaco, Bahamas, where it was the Abaco Club in Winding Bay, where I totally converted a property that was very private that ended later becoming, we had a Ritz-Carltonize it. It became a Ritz-Carlton flag. So I had to teach all the staff there, not only the standard operating procedures behind Ritz-Carlton, but also really just how to cook different foods other than just local fare. Like, it was really home cooking that they were doing there, and we had to elevate it for guests that were global travelers. From there, I went to Colorado, and I opened up a hotel up there. I was there for about 2 years, and it was West Paces Hotel Group and boutique hotel. I had 2 hotels I was in charge of, so I was learning the whole après-ski, kind of like the dining up in the mountains, which had a lot of Latin influences. And that's when, shortly after that, I went on Top Chef. Right from there. That's why if you ever look at my season, which is season 7 DC, it said Telluride, Colorado, because that's where I was working at the time. And so I thought I was going to open a restaurant up there after the season was over. And then I ended up moving back to Jacksonville, and we opened up Nippers Beach Grill that was on Jack's Beach. And, Caribbean fare, and because of my roots in the Bahamas, it kind of just tied into doing a great concept over there. And then from there, I've just been traveling abroad. I've opened up restaurants. I have a spice and sauce company. I lived in Barbados. I've toured all around. I've done events in the Hawaiian Islands. I cooked for Ms. Winfrey, Oprah Winfrey a lot. So I've been very, very fortunate that I've trained and staged from Japan and Spain and France, and been able to take all of my talents and open up concepts that I've taken chances on here in Jacksonville, from Gilbert's Underground Kitchen that was up in Fernandina Beach to Gilbert's Social that was on Southside Boulevard, consulting on a project in Jack's Beach, and we had Gilbert's Hot Chicken, Fish, and Shrimp, Gilbert's Southern Kitchen and Bar, Beach Barbecue. And gosh, I can keep going on and on. So I've been cooking for a long time. Silky's, yeah. We opened up Silky's back during COVID, November 3rd, 2020. We opened that up based on, it was a crazy time. I was doing a lot of meals out of the house because we were stuck. No one could do anything. We didn't know what was going on. So I ended up doing like a little post on social media and said, hey, I got these $10 meals, a family pack for $39, serves 4 people. Place your order, pay me Cash App, Venmo, Apple Pay, or whatever, and then come pick it up, and I'll bring it out in a mask and gloves and drop it in your car. I did that for like 6 months, and along with it during that time, I helped out a chef friend, Scotty Schwartz, and Nan Kavanaugh, who was a co-author for the book. We were doing, we were feeding a lot of the swab stations. He got a government contract. I was cooking for 300 to 400 nurses and doctors every morning, 5-6 days a week, and I would get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, go to his restaurant, El Jefe, over in Murray Hill, prep all the food, pack it up. He would then deliver it to these different sites. So a lot of people don't really even know that, but I was doing that at the same time, helping take care of my father-in-law, who was, elderly. He was like 90 at that time, 95, 96. Make sure he had his medication, make sure he was fed, and then he would watch. The joy of his time was, like, when my wife was out working as a nurse at these swab stations, I was cooking food, and we would just hang out, and he saw me as I was testing recipes and cooking for the community, and he would get so excited. He's like, man, they really love you. You're cooking a lot of good food. Thank you very much for, spending time with me, and it was a great time. So, everything that I did based on my food was based on my love and my passion for it. And during that time, I remember talking to Scotty every morning when he would, we would be finishing up, packing up. We started talking about, next chapters in our lives, and we didn't know what was going on with COVID and whatnot. And I said, man, and I'm a very efficient person. Like, I have to always be doing something. So
That's an understatement.
Yeah.
I just want to put that in there now.
So I was like, man, I need to write it. I want to write a cookbook. This is the time to do it. Like, I can figure out the time to make it happen. And at the same time, we had found this space in Springfield where we were living, 6 and Walnut. It was an old 3 layers cafe and blue chocolate. And we met with the landlord, negotiated a deal, so we got the space. And at the same time, I said, when we were getting ready to open it up, I was like, I talked to Nan, who had done a lot of, she was a editor for a bunch of magazines here in Jacksonville. She was already a writer. And I said, I love the article that she had written on me in the years past. And then the photographer, Kristen Penoyer, she had did the photo photography for some of those articles. And then I ended up hiring her to do photography for my restaurants. So I kind of already had the team together. And I just said, we need to make time. Let's put together a deck and then present it and then try to get an agent. And so we said, okay, we're going to do it. So we came up with like 10 recipes that we were going to present. We did the photos for it. And then we ended up finding a publisher. We presented to a bunch of publishers, and then the Lawrence Strom agency picked us. And then next thing you know, we started going to work. So for over a year, Sundays, I'm pretty sure I would work 7 days a week. Sunday, we would normally be closed. I would go shopping for the ingredients for a chapter. I would scale everything out. And then the next day, Kristen would come in, and then we would take pictures. She would take pictures of me while I was prepping the food, and also the finished dishes. So I literally did everything, all the research and development I did myself initially for the initial recipes. And then all the photos, she got different stages. So when you look through the book, you'll see different parts of whether my hands are mixing biscuits or me flipping over ribs or something like that, mixing a barbecue sauce. She got all of it at the same time. So we took about 10 months to do that. And then we presented it to Rizzoli. They loved it, and they said, yeah, let's do it. And next thing I know, the book was done. It happened it happened while I was literally working in the restaurant, every day, going shopping for the food, coming in there, doing the prep, training staff, doing payroll, like doing the whole thing. So it's when I see this book, it's not just it's a lot of history that goes into it, not only because of my past history, but also because of during the time it was very challenging in the world right now. We didn't know what was going on. But I took the lemons that I got, and I made some really good lemonade. And so here we are.
That's an understatement. Actually, and I'm not sure, this will be off my list, on my my little list I had for him, but I don't know how most cookbooks work, but I think it's intriguing on how you had normal non-chef people. To your point, someone over here said, I can't do it. And I said, oh, hold on. This is what Kenny did. I'm going to talk about my experience with that for just a second. So we are huge fans, and you can see that we've been blessed here in Jacksonville to have his hands in so many things around us that you may have not even realized what he was that part of. But one time we were there, and he said, hey, can you do me a favor? I need some people to cook some of the recipes out of this book. And I was like, sure. And I started throwing out some other people too. And he's like, no, not like people that are chefs, like people at home. So I need you, and I'm going to give you a protein. I'm going to give you 5 ways to make it, and then you need to make it. And I said, sure. And I was like, so we're going to be traveling, but we get back, and when do you need this? And so I ended up having to make 5 oxtail entrees in less than a week in order for it to end up in here between my travel and that opportunity. So I was going to IGA to pick up, I think, 36 pounds of oxtail during Lent when I'm not eating meat. And I was like, oh, my husband's going to have to eat a lot of meat, and we're going to have a lot of parties in this next week because I got a lot of oxtail to go through. But to your point over here saying that, oh, no, I can't do this, I was amazed about how approachable it is. And we're going to get to, I almost feel like I should just randomly skip to this question really quick because you brought up your spices. And I was saying, this is interesting because currently you're involved in another project, shockingly, up in Raleigh. And he's in essentially an efficiency hotel, so he has very limited room to cook. And he's taking essentially this same protein almost every day, but because of his spices, I'll let you continue from there.
Yeah, so I created, because of my father's love for barbecue, like I saw him always mixing up spices for his ribs, his chicken, things like that. So just, and the same thing with his sauces. So I came up with my own line of spices called Chef Kenny Spice Blends. And we have 5 signature spices. We have a Cajun spice, cinnamon coffee rub, jerk, Moroccan, and a chicken seasoning. And so with these spices, you can really, there's great recommendations on the side of the bottle. They're good on everything, literally, but you can really transform a dish. So say your household, you really only eat chicken, and you know your family only eats chicken, that's a big thing, but you want to switch it up. You can, out of these 5 different blends, you can literally take it to, 5 different cultural influences for those, just with those spices. And they're not super spicy. The Moroccan is the spiciest one, but they're full of flavor. And the same way you would use a Mrs. Dash or just like a Lori seasoned salt, you would use this blend. And you'd be surprised if just the way that you just do like regular baked chicken, just putting this on there and how it's going to transform that chicken. Or you're doing a grilled chicken legs, or you're doing barbecue or something like that, or fried chicken, adding that into your dredge or pre-marinating it. It'll just make it a little bit different. And another part of this book that was interesting is that helped develop the idea of Southern Cooking Global Flavors. I was hired to do a cooking class, a virtual cooking class for a couple in London, which I didn't realize they were in London. I got an email saying, "Oh, we want to learn how to make fried chicken. We looked you up online. We saw that you do fried chicken for Oprah Winfrey, so obviously you know how to do it, and we would love for you to teach us how to make a recipe. Are you willing to do this class?" I said, "Sure." So I said, "Okay, I'm gonna teach you how to do fried chicken the way my mom would do it," and I gave her the recipe. I was showing her how to make drop biscuits, and because they want to learn how to make biscuits as well. And I remember, this is before I realized who they were, I hired a photographer to handle the camera while I was doing the cooking demo. And all of a sudden, on the computer, they're coming up because it's Zoom, and we're doing like a toast, kind of overseas, and like, "Oh yeah, we're over here in London." And I was like, "Oh sweet, this was great." And they're like, "Yeah, it's my wife's 50th, and this was her dream." And so the gentleman was English, white gentleman, and then his wife was Indian. And so, they had a blended family, 2 different cultures, and I thought that was pretty cool. And then the wife was like, "Oh, I'm so excited. I was going through the recipe, but, I'm afraid to say that we don't have probably everything that's on the list." And I was like, "Okay, what are you missing?" And she said, "Well, the way my mom would do her fried chicken, she would season with like some seasoned salt, some garlic powder, onion powder, Lori seasoned salt, and lemon pepper or whatever. And she would season her chicken like that, then dust some flour on it, let it get it all tacky, dust more flour, and then while the grease was in the cast iron skillet, she would flick some flour in there. Once it starts to bubble up and get brown, then she knew when to put the chicken in, and she would just rotate that over time till it was perfectly golden brown, and it would be done." And so the lady said, "Well, we couldn't find lemon pepper. We don't have Lori seasoned salt," because they're overseas. They didn't have that. They have full spices. You want salt? Here's a million different types of salt from around the world. You need turmeric? Here's different variations. And so I'm looking at the couple, and I was like, "Well, let me ask you a question." I said, "Do you have garam masala? Do you have turmeric? Do you have cumin? Do you have coriander? Do you have ground ginger?" And so I just started naming all these, and I already knew. It was a rhetorical question because I knew that from her background, she was gonna have all these spices because I also know Indian food as well. So I knew just as a standard pantry for her, she was gonna have like 20 different spices there. I said, "So what we're gonna do, we're gonna swap out some of these spices for spices that your family is already used to enjoying." And then in doing that, I showed her the art of making fried chicken and how to make a good drop biscuit. But then the flavors basically align with the palate that her family is dynamic. And so when I came up with the idea of the book, I was like, this would be great. Like, let's show the classics in the way that I grew up eating Southern. And there's, kind of take these 10 chapters and have these kind of what I look at as iconic Southern dishes. And let's make some variations because at the end of the day, we're a melting pot. There's, immigrants from all around the world that have come here and settled. And I remember as a kid, one of my best friends was Italian, and his mom, Stacy and Joe Ferrone, and her mom, she was a hairdresser, and so we were like latchkey kids, right? We had the shoestring with the key, and we were able to go in and out of the house, and that's just how we grew up back then. I'm 51, right? And so I remember spending the night over my friends' homes and then going in, and I would always help the mom out with cooking dinner or whatever. And so, and my friends always thought it was crazy, like, why are you always in the kitchen? Like, we should be playing video games right now. I'm like, well, I love it. And so, but I always thought it was intriguing when I would go into everyone else's refrigerator, and everyone's pantry looked different than mine. I was like, but we're growing up in the same area. We're jumping on the bike the same way. We're jumping fences the same way. We're swimming in the same pool. We're playing football or stickball or whatever. But when it came down to eating, like everyone's dinner or breakfast is a little bit different. I was walking in a snowsuit with a little homemade foil bowl with like fried fish and grits and some hot sauce, and everyone else might be eating like a box of Kellogg's cereal. And
I think he's talking about me. I want Kenny's, yeah.
And so when I came with the idea of the book, I said this would be great to be able to have this core basics of the Southern, and then tie in some of my through my friends' backgrounds and how I grew up eating, and tie it into some different flavors. And so that's how the book came about. It's really taking the things I grew up eating, the way my mom taught me, and how I evolved from after culinary school. And then, one of my best friends is Filipino, so you'll see, adobo oxtails in there. Paying homage to my friend Ray Eugenio, who's, born and raised in the Philippines, lived in Japan, then came to move to here in Orange Park, where his dad was in the military, and then we met, while we were working at the Ritz-Carlton. And when he did Family Meal, he made chicken adobo for the first time. I was like, oh my God, these flavors are so addicting. And I had to add that into my repertoire. So I wanted to be able to show, like, based on your family dynamic, at some point, I don't care if you're, you may be Italian and Polish, and it's like, all right, this side's doing a lot of, pierogies and kielbasa and whatnot, and this other side's doing a lot of fresh pasta and risotto, or depending on what region the grandparents are from, and you're still a blended family, with two different cultures culturally. And so I thought it would be cool to be able to write something that everyone can kind of relate to, because everything tells a story. So, that's kind of how it came about.
I personally love it, and I can tell you by experience, it's very approachable. It was really unique, so I think I would advise trying that same protein with all these different flavors and these different cultures that you're saying. So after, with all of this cooking, like, how are you still inspired? How are you not burnt out? How, like,
That's a good question. So right now, I'm vice president of culinary operations for a big restaurant group in Miami, where they opened up one of my franchises, House of Birds and Drop Biscuits, which is a sister company of Silky's. And when I moved down there into Miami a couple years ago, there's a lot of restaurants. We have literally like 12, 13 restaurants in Miami already. We're opening more in Raleigh, Durham. I was literally in Raleigh. We're opening one tomorrow. We just had friends and family today. We'll have 6 in Rhode Island Airport. We're gonna end up having 8 in Raleigh. So what keeps me inspired is the fact that I can shift gears. Like, I can be in one restaurant that is based on super high-end fine dining, Michelin star level food, like Stubborn Seed in South Beach, which is run by Jeremy Ford, who's native to Jacksonville Beach, who's worked under Matthew, who trained with chefs that I trained back in the day. And so it's funny how, our paths have crossed, and now we're in Miami, and I'm the VP of culinary, running, one of his restaurants through his lens. And what gets me excited is that I can walk into one restaurant, do an audit, check on them, make sure they're clean and organized and doing all the things according to the standards of operation. But then I can connect with the individual, the chef, and what they're passionate about at that time based on that concept. I can help add to that because I've been doing it for so long. There's not one chef or restaurant, from a Burger King to a Michelin star restaurant, that I can't relate to, because I've done it all. And so what gets me excited is that there's younger generation. It's important for me to pay it forward, because someone took a chance with me. You know, Matthew took a chance with me, you know, when I was 18 and a half years old, 19, to go work in the grill room. You know, he showed me how to break down my first tuna loin, showed me how to use my first bandsaw, he gave me my first taste of caviar. You know, he gave me the opportunity to be a sous chef under him, where I was able to write menus. I mean, he nurtured a talent that he saw in me, and I wouldn't be where I am right now had he not done that. You know, and I was just a young black chef that was trying to find his way in a European-run company. And in our restaurant, we were a unit, we were a family. And I saw how if someone that just looked at you as a person that they wanted to invest in, and that you, because of your hard work, you know, he looked at me and said, hey, I'm gonna do everything I can to help you out and train you. And so I look at that and I give it back. And so that's what keeps me inspired, the training and development of the individual. Yeah, I mean, literally last night I was talking to one of my young chefs. He's 23 years old, running this Michelin star restaurant, Stubborn Seed. Jeremy Ford, you know, is mid-30s, you know, late 30s. But this young kid is running. He's a chef de cuisine. So I was on the phone with him for about an hour and a half, teaching him about leadership and mentoring and proper training. And I spent an hour and a half out of the day. I could have been doing something else, but I said that it was important for me to connect with him and to pay it forward to him, because someone did that with me when I was his same age, running a same level restaurant, you know? And so that's what keeps me inspired.
What advice do you actually give them in like a nutshell?
For him, I told him—
Not an hour and a half, just the nutshell.
Yeah, nutshell.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, for him, I literally told him that at the end of the day, you know, you're supposed to be going through the challenge you are right now. You're supposed to make mistakes. You're supposed to recover and analyze those mistakes, and try not to let them happen again. But you know, if you fall down 7 times, you get up 8. You know, that's what it's about. And so take your passion, include people a part of the process, and you'll be surprised how you'll grow. Some people are scared to give all of themselves to somebody because they have a fear that someone's gonna take their job or something like that. And I said, you can't have that mental. And I'm not saying that you do, but you can't have it. You need to just go in and say, you know what? I learned this, I'm gonna teach. As you teach, you learn. As you learn, you teach. And I was like, that needs to be your mantra. And that was the conversation we had last night, as an example.
So who do you have as your mentor? I know you said I know your parents and your family off, but anyone in the culinary world?
You know, there's a lot of chefs that I can't really pinpoint one in particular, but I try to put myself in a circle of people that are high achievers, that are working really hard, so we can have the same dialogue. So Tiffany Deary, for example, she was on my season of Top Chef. She's on, you know, Bobby's Triple Threat. She's done Bar Rescue. She's all over TV, and she's really killing it in the Dallas, Texas market. And so we talk once a week, all the time, and we always are talking business. One, we always check to see how we are in our mental and how we're doing personally, and you know, and from a health standpoint, we're good. And then we just start talking shop, and that's the leadership, and that's where the leadership and the mentoring comes into play, because as she's going through something at that time, she can share an experience, and then I can share an experience, and we go back and forth, and then usually at the end of it all, we both learn something after that conversation. And so I got chefs all around the country. When I was doing the book tour, my brother's a chef. You know, when I'm out in LA and I'm staying with him, we're talking food and shop, and he's taking me to different restaurants to help feed my knowledge further. And these chefs that I'm doing these different dinners with, I go into their restaurants, I see what they're doing. I'm like, wow, this is great, and I try everything I possibly can to add to that, and also learn from it and let them know I appreciate it. And so for me, I can just go out and have dinner, and the person may not know who I am, which doesn't even matter. I'm just going to sit down and have a great dinner, and I appreciate the fact that the lights are on, they cook the meal, there's someone to serve me, they gave me a drink, of water or a glass of wine, the place is clean, and they do it. They get in, they wake up every day to do it. Sometimes we need to sit back and just think, like, this person just opened up their home, their restaurant, to feed us with something they're passionate about. It may not be your cup of tea, but you decided to walk through those doors and enjoy it. So, be respectful of the process. And so I try to do that and pay that forward, and learn from those restaurateurs, because it's a lot of hard work.
A lot of hard work. So for those of us who are the home cooks, though, what technique do you think we should all know, that everyone should know of a cooking technique?
Well, I think you should learn all the core basic cooking techniques. You should know how to grill. You should know how to sear. You should know how to braise. You should know how to roast. You should know how to poach. Just those basic techniques alone I think is gonna help you when you come time to cook. Everything isn't. Some people just love the grill and they'll fire up the grill and they're always grilling everything, which is great. Some people have no problem baking or roasting in the oven. I think that's cool too. Some might be scared of turning on a hot pan and have a high heat and the sear, when you're sauteing, because you're like, oh, it's gonna splatter. Well, do a little less oil, be controlled, be over it. But I think it's good to just kind of learn each technique of the core bases of cooking. And then, of course, knife skills. Knife skills are probably the biggest one. My mom always says, I'll go home and I try to cook in her kitchen. I said, Mom, you have all these dull knives. And he was like, oh, well, you're not going to cut yourself. I said, no, if I cut myself, it's going to be really bad because the knives are so dull. But I think it's important to learn those cutting techniques. And she taught me at a very young age. I was very comfortable holding a knife. I'm talking like 7, 8, 9 years old. I was breaking down chickens. I was doing all kinds of stuff because she took the time and my father took the time to teach me. But I think the core basic of cooking techniques is the best one.
As long as you know those, you can kind of
you can.
Then we just add your spice blends to it, and we're good to go.
And then we're good to go. Yeah.
And then we're like all famous, and then they're interviewing us. No, I'm kidding. So, do you have a secret go-to ingredient or flavor profile? And if you don't want to share it, is it part of one of these spices?
I think for me, simple, like a good olive oil or butter, garlic, onions, parsley, salt, pepper. Those are, lemon.
I'm hungry right now.
Any of that, you can make anything taste good. Whether you're grilling, whether you're roasting, whether you're sauteing, you need the alums. So like olive oil, the onion, the garlic, or a shallot or green onions. It's like the sofrito or, the Trinity. Every culture has something that's a blend of all those basic items, some kind of peppers. I think you have to have that. If you, just that base, you're good. I mean, if you want to cheat, like if you have a good seasoning, like which I enjoy my seasonings. I think they're great. But if you find one, just a little bit of oil, a little olive oil, and that spice, then you can go really far with that. But other than that, salt, pepper, olive oil or butter, a little lemon, garlic, onion, you're good. Parsley.
I think so. So you've had a variety of restaurants in the Jacksonville area and beyond. So what's your process for deciding what type of cuisine to open next, and what influences that decision?
Oh, that's a great question. That's a great question. It's funny. I'm gonna be doing a podcast in October, and they asked me 4 to 6 questions. And one of the ones that I want to talk about, and then one of the ones that I was talking about was demographics and making a decision on the food to open in a restaurant in that area. And so I think that you have to do your demographical research. You need to. Right now, they're so easy to do it. You can ask AI; they're going to be able to spit out information. What is the household medium in a 10-mile radius of your of this location, of this address? What are the cultural backgrounds? What's the breakdown, the makeup? What are the most popular restaurants in the particular area right now? And then ultimately, what are you passionate about? Yeah. You have to answer and check a lot of those boxes. The big chain companies, they spend millions of dollars on demographical research, but you can go into Google and go on Yelp, and you can literally figure that out. It'll take a couple of hours, but anything that takes, that you want to do well at, it's going to take time. You have to invest in the time and the research. So like as an example, like when we opened up Silky's initially, I looked at it and said, okay, we're in Springfield. What is missing in this market? You know, I lived in Springfield. I lived on 9th and Market. The restaurant was 6th and Walnut. And I said, what is missing over here? I said, well, one, this restaurant space is screaming, you know, fast casual counter service, because that's with the makeup of the current space. So I wasn't trying to put something that was different that was already there. It's like, okay, let me put some, it was COVID. I'm like, I don't know what's gonna happen. Let's put some fresh paint on it. The layout is kind of already here. So what do I want to put in here? My wife at the time wanted me to do fine dining. I said, that makes no sense for this space. It makes no sense. I said, we want to cater to the masses. And when I was cooking out of the house was, I analyzed over 6 months what was the most popular dishes and what days we sold the most. So I was able to go back and track it. And everything had to do with chicken, you know. And then ironically, what happened shortly after that, we were trying to make a decision. Ms. Winfrey had called me to check on me to see how we were doing. And then also asked me, she wanted me to settle a bet with Kirby and Will, you know, Gail's kids. They were all kind of at a table talking, and they was like, you know, she was like, Kenny, I'm trying to tell them I hadn't had your biscuit for the first time until this time, but I knew the only person to sell this bet was you. So will you tell them? And so I settled the bet, you know, gave the response, and when I hung up, I said, okay, we're doing chicken and biscuits. I was like, so for O-Dub to call me up out of the blue and then ask about the biscuit the first time, I said, I think we should go that route. And so that's kind of how it was born. And so there was it was probably about 2 months of research before we made that call.
So what lesson, either in cooking or running a business, did you learn the hard way?
Oh, that's another great question. The hardest thing about the business is not for me, wasn't passion, it wasn't hard work. It's people, you know, having the right people in place, giving your all to train and develop them, you know, trust, you know, everyone wants to grow at some point, you know, and yeah, the work ethic is definitely, you know, when you interview a person, you're interviewing them because you want them to, you know, obviously you're like, they're coming in because they want a job and you need to fill a space. And then also when you hire that person, you're hoping that they're going to be there for a long time, because you're not trying to just, every time you have turnover, it costs you money. It's time that goes into it, it's mistakes, and the guests have no idea. When you walk in, you're like, oh, honey, you know what? Oh, yeah, we just saw the article about Silky's. It's around the corner. Let's just go eat. We're in the neighborhood. You know, you have no idea that we just may have had 100% turnover. And this cashier had just been trained, but it was their first time on the register, and they're trying to remember everything. And there's a line out the door. And that stress, their first, you know, even though there's somebody there with them, you may not also realize that someone called in. And then they were supposed to have a second or third person there working with them. But you know what? We're open now. Like, that person was supposed to be there 15 minutes ago. They decided not to show up. I can't just say, well, you know, I'm going to close the doors today right now. Like, you need to kind of, and then you can't, and then your problem is not their problem. They'll say, oh, well, you should have just closed. Shouldn't have been open. And it's like, there's no understanding anymore. You know what I mean? And everyone wants it now. So I have to instill so many different things into a person, and they're coming for that. They're coming for the experience. They're coming for the knowledge, but they seem like they really want it, but they don't. They don't want to be judged. They want to do whatever they want. You know, like, hey, you know, they're not thinking about really what service is. And coming from a fine dining background, I had to scale back my expectations versus when I was running a fine dining, you know, 5-star restaurant, a hotel. It was perfection. We didn't settle ever, you know. And if you didn't like it, then don't come to work. And in a casual environment, it's like I might have a 18, 19-year-old kid that just graduated high school and might not have a lot, but they're willing to come in and wash dishes and do whatever. But maybe at home they had challenges, and the restaurant may be their safe place. And so you have to be a psychiatrist. You have to be everything in the business. So I would say that, the stressful part are the people, because you want to give them a job. It's like, man, I'm paying taxes. I'm giving you a job. I'm doing everything I possibly can, and you're helping me too. Like, and restaurants aren't crazy profitable. When you're really good, you might do 10, 15% to the bottom line. You look at like Walmart, for example, they only bring like 3-4% to the bottom line. You think that it's like, oh, they're crazy. Yeah, but the volume is why they look great. And from that standpoint, but you're talking 3 to 4%. If I try to sell a spice in there, they'll only buy it from me maybe 50 cents above cost. So we have to move a lot of product in order to be able to, in which they're going to guarantee to a certain extent. But at the end of the day, people are the biggest thing. That's why you're seeing there's so many different things with AI and robots and all kinds of stuff that's coming out. They're trying to replace the person, and that's the hardest part.
For sure. Okay. So when was a time that you had to sacrifice the food you wanted to make in order to meet a business expectation?
I think that every concept I've ever done, I knew what we were capable of doing in that space. So I never did something that took it over the top, that I had to compromise. Right. It was like, I knew this place was going to be fried chicken and biscuits. I knew this is our standard. What I made, I looked at how everyone, I said, can a 17-year-old, 18-year-old person be able to do this versus a person that has 20 years of experience? I had to look at like, no, I need to have 2 to 3 years of experience on a high and almost no experience when they first come in.
And then training them to get to that level.
We are going to open it up for audience questions right now. Yes. So
we already have some?
We're going to collect them. Oh, we do.
Okay.
So, yeah. So I just want to thank Cindy and Kenny for such a wonderful conversation thus far. But we are going to open it up to audience questions. So I see we have a ton of people.
Wow,
but if you didn't already, if you have any questions, please do write it down on your clipboards.
I should have asked you all before I even put my own together. Silkies, please, can you open a new restaurant in Durban or the 210 area?
Where?
And can you open any new restaurant in Durban or the 210 area? So that's just south there, like the Julington and...
Well,
those of us that moved to Jacksonville a long time ago, like all of that became something when we didn't, and so now I'm completely lost the minute like I crossed like the bridge. So yeah, it's like I have to translate.
Yes, anything is possible. Right now,
they need a Silkies.
Well, so here's my business model now is we actually have House of Birds and Drop Biscuits, which we opened in Miami. And we have a franchise that we registered as a franchise. So I am looking for people that want to invest in a franchise and then go through the training to open up a space. And so that's that will work. If someone. Okay. Okay. Okay.
They do need good food. That part, I'll second that emotion. So okay. Speaking of businesses, on what basis or metric do you close a restaurant?
Great question. So, we closed Silkies June 3rd of this year. We had opened the franchise out of Miami, which has been doing very, very well. It's a high traffic area. August of last year was the last month that made money. We made say like $8,000-9,000 to the bottom line, and that's with every bill paid for the house, like everything. So that's good money to know that you have extra and everything's you're doing well. The next 7 months were very tough. The landlord didn't allow us to open up or to do our Thanksgiving to go, which I had been doing for years. Smoking well over 100+ turkeys, cooking for up to like 400 families. That brought in like $16,000, $18,000 in sales. Couldn't do that because I couldn't bring a refrigerated truck out anymore. Which the goal was to grow the business, and we were percentage-based rent. The Players Championship, I was featured out on the golf course the last couple of years. at the Taste of Jack's, and I was also cooking for the main sponsor, Optum. Well, I couldn't bring the truck out during that week as well, which cost me $80,000. And so what, the landlord basically said, oh, well, the sound of the truck is too loud for the neighbors. And I'm like, well, if my cooler went down, you think I'm going to give up $5,000 in food that I have in normal inventory? No, I'm going to rent a truck for $375. I'm going to put $298 in gas a week in there, and I'm going to, until I can get the cooler fixed. So what's the difference? And so I realized at that moment that he was prohibiting me from being successful, and ultimately it was costing me $100,000. So I had already reinvested $70,000 back in the business to keep it going, anticipating with the economy and everything to bounce back, which it didn't really bounce back. And so I had to make a call, but I made the call after 7 months, and it's like $70,000. So at some point, if to make that call, it was purely based on the numbers. It wasn't that our reviews were bad, or it wasn't that the food was bad, or we haven't provided bad service. 4.5, stars on whether Yelp or Google, or 4.8 on Facebook. I mean, I couldn't necessarily do any better, and that's with me not having to be in the store every day. That's with a team that I had trained, and so it just everyone's attention shifted, which happens in Jacksonville. Jacksonville have very fair weather fans. That's just a fact. And so whatever is hot at the moment, that's where they shift to. And then they forget about the person that was over here, and you can't run a business like that, especially a small one like, what we had over there. So ultimately it comes down to the numbers.
So what's your favorite Top Chef memory?
Great question. Probably my best one was when I won an elimination challenge. It was a farm challenge, and I cooked for Patrick O'Connell, who's the chef of the Inn at Little Washington. We had a big WorldCon table out there that we fed all the judges, and we were cooking in the elements. We were grilling. It was like a big table full of produce and beautiful meats and seafood, and I really won it with a side dish. I did like this cauliflower kind of, I did a eggplant curry, a curry eggplant that went with, Kevin Spraga had made a couscous made with cauliflower. Initially it was with broccoli, but then he dropped it on the ground, and then he had to make another one. And so we were both up for the win. I ended up winning, and it was great. It was a great win. But I got sick. It was raining outside, super cold, and I remember going back, and I ended up taking a hot shower, and I rubbed down with Vicks, and I was in a big robe trying to sweat it. I knew I was going to sweat it out that night. And I remember, and I didn't know this at the time, but I came downstairs, and all the chefs were still there. Tiffany, good friend, she's like, oh, come over here, Big Daddy, come sit next to me. And then everyone knew I was sick, but from the customer or the guest I was watching on TV, they had no idea. And then all of a sudden they played this whole little clip of all the ladies that were there, and they all gave me these nicknames. And then that was probably the best memory, because I was really sick and they were really feeling bad that I to the point where I couldn't interview. I lost my voice for 5-7 days. So whenever you do that show, after you get done doing that episode, you have to do interviews, because that's a big part of the show. So say we go do an elimination or a quick fire, and then we do elimination cook, and then the elimination challenge is done. When we get back that night, I don't care if it's 10 o'clock at night, you could be doing interviews up to 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. They have your name on they put on a refrigerator, your name, and then you're like, up, Kenny, you're up, and you gotta go downstairs. And if you're good at interviewing, you could be done in like 30 minutes. If you're bad at interviewing, you could be down there an hour and a half. And then you're on that next list, you're like, oh man, he's terrible, he's gonna be there forever. Yeah. So that was my best memory.
Okay, so I'm trying to combine some of these questions for time, and so where can I purchase your spices?
You can go to chefkennygilbert.com, where we have it there. You can also go to Amazon. It's also on walmart.com and ebay.com. And
Okay.
spices and sauces. You can get the sauce set, which has 4 sauces in there, and then you can get the spices individually. And then on my site, chefkennygilbert.com, I have some special. I have a special where you can get the book and a couple spices for a special price, and there's a lot of nice, cool packages.
There's a lot of great questions. I think we need more time. How do we get more time? Okay. Are you interested in planning to move into or leave your mark in the Louisiana market? And they're also asking about your brother's restaurant in LA. So this person knows you.
So my brother is corporate chef for a restaurant group called Dom Food Group. He works with all kind of celebrities. So literally, they just signed a deal with The Rock. He's gonna be opening up a restaurant that my brother helped cultivate. It's gonna be like a diner concept, which is pretty cool. He doesn't really have a restaurant. He's the corporate chef for research and development for this company. So he works with celebrities that come in that want to take an idea and make it come to life. Like Gwyneth Paltrow, she has Goop. Like he helped, make that concept efficient. He has a sausage company that they just created. So they're getting ready to launch that. So he doesn't really have, he got out of the business because he doesn't like the stress of dealing with people.
So his brother hasn't learned that
Literally,
yet, luckily
yeah,
for us, right? So I'm going to combine a couple of questions. What fusion of cultures deserves more intentions, or which do you think make the best combinations?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think every culture, I don't want to say fusion, because I think it's kind of like not the right term. I think that if you like a protein, for example, say you love duck, but you love, say, Szechuan Chinese cuisine, and that cuisine may do a lot of shrimp, a lot of pork, or a lot of chicken, and you want to introduce duck because you love it. I don't really consider that fusion, but I think that you're adding something that you like based on what your family likes to cook. It could be venison. You may have someone that hunts a lot, and you want to, you're not doing beef, but you want to introduce venison. I think that can, wherever beef would be, or lamb, you can kind of interject that in there. So I think that, I don't think there's cultures that really fuse together per se. I think you can get away, I think respectfully, Chinese cuisine, Japanese cuisine, Vietnamese, Thai, Laotian, Korean, they're all their own distinctive things. Regions of Italy, German, like hell, even in Florida, North Florida is way different than Central and South Florida. And so I think it just I think you need to stick to what it is, but then you might be able to switch up a protein, or you might say, well, I don't really like broccoli, but I like more mushrooms or something. You just kind of slide that in, but still cook it culturally the way it's supposed to be done.
What do you do if you get a bad meal in a restaurant?
Oh, what do I do?
Yes, you personally. I don't want to be there. No, I'm just kidding.
if it's bad, like getting spoiled, then I'm definitely gonna say something. I'm like, this is rancid. I can't eat it. I'm just gonna be honest. I'm like, I'm sorry, this is rancid. I can't eat. I can't. If it's seafood is ammoniated or it's sour or whatever, I'm sorry, I can't eat it. This is bad. And then I'll be really upset, like anybody else would. Especially, my senses are pretty acute, so I'm gonna smell it and kind of already know. If it's something that was just poorly made, if it wasn't seared good enough or was under seasoned, I'm probably not going to say too much of anything. I'll probably end up saying, hey, can I get some salt and pepper? I'll give you an example, and this is probably bad to say, but I went to Calvert Chop House, and I ordered a steak. And it wasn't really seasoned. Now, and I was celebrating the fact that I just signed for my cookbook. And I said, I'm going to go down there. I was by myself. I ordered I was thinking about my dad. My dad loved big steakhouses. I got a dirty martini. I ordered like a seafood platter, which was amazing. I ordered some cheese. I was just there hanging out and grazing. And I ordered one of their big steaks. And the steak was seared perfectly and whatnot, but I cut into it, and it was totally bland. It didn't have enough salt. It didn't have any salt and pepper on it. And I just thought, I was like, this is crazy. So then I'm like, I didn't take it back. I spent like I don't know, $200 on this steak. Like literally, it was like a big cowboy chop, whatever. So I just said, hey, can you bring me salt and pepper? Can you bring me a side of béarnaise? Can you be a side of red wine sauce? Can I get this garlic confit cooked softer? And they brought everything out, and then I made it how it needed to be.
Tableside Kenny Gilbert.
Yeah.
Next, if you have a bad meal next time, we just call him and have him tableside create the sauce that makes it palatable. So a lot of people have this similar question. What's your favorite meal that you enjoy just sitting down and relaxing with? And I'm going to take it to 2 levels. Is that different from like something that you would have in a restaurant and something that you would prepare at your own home?
So my guilty pleasure, I love a lot of Asian cuisine. I like because it's the unknown. A lot of things that I don't know about, I like to study. And so when I go to a restaurant and someone's doing something authentic, I want to eat the most authentic thing that they would have as a family meal item, which a lot of times they're not going to do a lot of times in American restaurants because they make it so palatable for everyone, which I don't like. I hate that. So I always look for the things that's off the beaten path. I was like, no, what did you have for family meal today? That's what I want to eat. And so I love Thai. That's a guilty pleasure. Pattaya Thai on King is like Lake and Robert and Russell and I can't remember the dad's name right now. I think it's Russell Sr. I love all their food. Like if I was sick at home, I would buy like $200 worth of food. No, I'm gonna eat off of for 2 days. Have it delivered. I would text him, hey Russ, I'm ordering a bunch of food. I'm not feeling good. He would throw in some extra things. His mom would send me some nak chum or whatever, and I would be in heaven. I could literally eat that every day.
There you go. A lot of people had a question about your inspiration for new recipes and dishes. Where does it come from?
It's kind of like going back to the demographic part. It's like wherever I'm at, I transport to that area, and then I really dive into what I think makes sense and I think that everyone's gonna enjoy. I used to, one of my fine dining days, I used to cook purely based on the ratings and the diamonds and stars and what it took to achieve that. Which had nothing to do with any kind of local food. I had to fly in turbo from France. I had to buy a rouget. I had to fly in, during the fall, grouse and Scottish hare and certain type of mushrooms and truffles. And so, like, I'm like, no, I have to cook at this level, and I have to have these ingredients, and I need to respect them. And now it's more so, hey, this is gonna be a cool Italian concept in this market that is missing. What are the things that people are going to want to come here and have? What are things that are common that the whole family's going to enjoy? So I'll put together family meal packages so that they can order that one meal, and that way everyone enjoy. And I'm going to have some other things that maybe is very authentic to a region or a couple different regions in Italy, and that way someone can be relatable because, one person's grandmother may be from the South, one may be from the North, and maybe from the Central, and it's like, you're not gonna make everyone happy. My Nona's sauce it's not like my Nona's. Like, I'm like, I don't know who she is. I don't know what to tell you.
That's very true. Speaking on the Italian cuisine. So if you could cook for any person alive or ancestors, who would it be and what would you make?
Well, I wish I can cook for my dad again because he passed in '96. And so I know he looks down on me now and he sees all the things I've done, but I would love to be able to, one, have him come back, my grandmother, and then be able to do like all the things they inspire me to do, to be able to show have them taste it now. Right. Even if it was just for a day, just be like, hey, today I'm doing a whole big, barbecue deal. My grandmother cooked, she was diabetic and she cooked a full meal every meal period, and I would want to do everything just for her to take little bites, and just to be able to savor it, and that would be the two.
Is my husband crying out there? He may be. Alligator ribs at Underdog.
We are sadly going to have to end on that note. We have
a couple more hours. Everybody come back to the house.
Sadly. If only the branch didn't close, we would just have y'all chat for the rest of the night. We'd all stay here until midnight. We'd all be super hungry, but